Good evening, I'm Francesca, Executive Director of the Italian Cultural Society, Washington, D.C., and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you tonight to celebrate with us the Week of the Italian Language in the World. As you may know, the Italian Cultural Society offers a variety of courses for kids, for adults, and language and culture courses, and we also organize events throughout the year, including an annual gala at the Embassy of Italy that is upcoming on November 8th, for those of you interested. This evening we are honored to partner with the Washington National Opera of the Kennedy Center and welcoming the Cafritz Young Artists here in front of me, the Artistic Director of the Washington National Opera, Francesca Zambello, and Audience Development Manager, Shiana Valentine. Thank you for coming. And we are delighted about the Washington National Opera offer of a discount of 40% on all the performance of Aida and the Marriage of Figaro's performance upcoming now. And so for all participants of tonight and our Italian Cultural Society member, so please take advantage. And we also have two special evenings on October 30th and November 22nd, during which we are welcome for a backstage tour and champagne toast before the opera. So thank you, Shiana, for organizing all of this and give us this opportunity. So enjoy Aida and the Marriage of Figaro. Also tonight we are delighted to have Francesca Vanoli from the Embassy of Italy, who I want to invite here to say a few words about this week of the Italian language in the world.
Thank you. I was a primary school teacher for 15 years. I think you can hear me all the way down there. Thank you so much for inviting me, Francesca. And it is an honor to represent the Embassy of Italy in Washington tonight. The Week of the Italian Language in the World is one of the most vibrant and meaningful moments in the cultural programming of our diplomatic network. It is the occasion when embassies, consulates, the Italian Cultural Institutes, and the cultural partners of the embassies all around the world can showcase the most significant results of their work in promoting our language and culture in each host nation. And I believe there is no more prestigious and easily recognizable context for the Italian language than opera. An extraordinary art form in which the Italian language becomes a global heritage for artists, scholars, and enthusiasts alike from all over the world, and for students who further their musical education in Italian schools and conservatories, for musicians who pursue their dream of performing at La Scala, La Fenice, the San Carlo Theatre, and also for all those everyday listeners who, despite never having studied a language, are nevertheless able to recognize it, even hum it briefly in a passage of an aria from Verdi, Rossini, Mozart, and all that immense and invaluable musical heritage which we have the pleasure and honor of celebrating here tonight at the Italian Cultural Society of Washington. Allow me to thank the ICS and its director, Francesca Casazza, both dynamic and tireless partners of the Embassy in the promotion of our country, through language classes, meetings, and conferences to promote the Italian history, geography, culture, cuisine, why not, and high-profile cultural initiatives such as this one, dedicated to opera. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the Italian Cultural Institute, which is another invaluable partner in all the activities that allow us to bring our language and culture to the attention, participation, and support of the United States and to the American people. And once again, thank you for this wonderful initiative, Francesca, and to all the guests tonight, buon divertimento, buon ascolto. Grazie.
Grazie Francesca. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce you to our special guest, Francesca Zambello, Artistic Director of the Washington National Opera at the Kennedy Center. Mrs. Zambello is an internationally acclaimed opera and theater director, educated at Moscow University and Colgate University. She has led productions at more than 50 major opera houses worldwide, including the Metropolitan Opera, La Scala, the Bolshoi, and the Paris Opera. Since 2012, she has guided the Washington National Opera with a vision of innovation, commissioning new works, and expanding community engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, Francesca Zambello.
Grazie, buonasera a tutti. There's a lot of Francescas here tonight. Okay, my mother, when I was named Francesca, she said, no one can call her Fran. So my nickname is Cheska. I'm wondering what everybody else's nickname is. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you all. We're going to get to some great music tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about our season, what we're doing. Also, wonderful Diego, I believe, is going to fill us in a bit more on Mozart and Verdi. Of course, two great pillars of Italian opera, even though, you know, we let Mozart write in Italian, even though he wasn't Italian. But so our season this year, it really spans sort of, I think, all the great composers in many ways, and also a lot about American music. But I want to just give us a little brief intro, since the Kennedy Center is frequently in the news now. So I just want to get that out of the way, get that shopping done, if you don't mind. The Washington National Opera is an independent organization. We are an affiliate of the Kennedy Center, like the National Symphony. We have our own board of trustees, like they do. Our financial world is dependent on our donors and our trustees, not on the Kennedy Center. Our affiliation with the Kennedy Center really guarantees us time in 3 theaters. We use 3 different theaters in the building. And also some of the matrix staff, which means people in development and marketing. I say this because there are a number of people who don't want to come to the Kennedy Center to the opera, which of course hurts us greatly. It hurts all the artists, it hurts the orchestra, the chorus, it hurts people working as an usher, when in actual fact we had nothing to do with the change of management of the building. We are still, and have always been, this is our 70th anniversary, for 70 years, a company dedicated to performing the best works, to creating community through music, building bridges between people who may not always think alike, and really believing so strongly and powerfully in the art form. We are an apolitical cultural institution. We are not a political cultural institution. Okay, everybody got that? Check. Yes. Okay. That's great. Thank you. I'm thrilled to have someone here from the Italian Embassy. Of course, as my name suggests, I had one Italian parent, my father, and so that seemed to be a natural segue into the world of opera. So what are we doing this season? Our fall is really about 2 great pillars of the repertory, 2 great operatic hits. Verdi's Aida, which we open with, which is one of the grandest operas ever written. And we will be doing it with, big chorus, ballet, large, lavish production, wonderful conductor, and 2 casts. So I'm sure that everyone will take one of these things that tells you what we're doing this season home, and everyone will come to the opera. I promise you an amazing evening of spectacle, grandeur, and just bathing in Verdi's spectacular music. In repertory with this is the Marriage of Figaro, which we're going to get to hear some selections of tonight and learn more about, of course, Mozart's great opera, which is in a way really a revolutionary piece, because it really deals with enormous class issues. That was really what Mozart was writing so much about through the problems and travails, which we'll hear about, of Figaro, Susanna, his wife-to-be, and the Count and the Countess. And so the sort of human heart part of that story, in a way, is a wonderful play against Verdi's drama, Aida, which is an opera set against war, but it is really about a love triangle, and in many ways a very intimate love triangle of Aida, Amneris, and Radames. But we're not going to go into that too much tonight because I want to tell you a little bit more about the rest of the season. We also have in our holiday period an opera based on The Little Prince, Il Piccolo Principe, another great title in every, it's the most translated book in the world aside from the Bible, by the way. And it's a fantastic opera where it features many of our Cafritz Young Artists. The Cafritz Young Artists program is a program of 12 singers and 2 pianists who are emerging stars of tomorrow. So many of the people that you'll get a chance to see in that program and in various roles go on to big careers elsewhere. So that is a wonderful holiday piece. It's something not just for families and kids, but I think for everybody. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. We will be celebrating 2026, which is of course the semi-sesquicentennial of the United States. If you say that fast, you get something really good. I'm not sure what, but it's like saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or something. Anyway, it's the 250th anniversary of this country, and so we are celebrating it through a lot of great American music over 2 seasons. Our whole spring repertory will be American works. And then next fall, which I can't tell you about quite yet, the fall of 2026 will also feature works either by Americans or also about America, because so many composers, for example, Puccini, wrote 3 operas set in America, even though he barely ever got here until after 1900. Anyway, so we will be doing in January, we have a program called the American Opera Initiative. Which is basically a program that develops emerging composers and librettists. We commission them to write short operas, 20-minute operas around American stories. So if you are someone, or you know someone who says, I don't know if I can bear sitting through an opera, this is an evening of 20-minute operas. It couldn't be shorter, right? Okay. So you get a great chance to experience new works by major new talents, as well as hearing many of the Cafritz Young Artists in those roles. We then will be doing 2 operas in the Eisenhower Theater. The fall is all in the Opera House. Then the Eisenhower Theater is the middle-sized theater in the Kennedy Center, where we will be doing Scott Joplin, who was who began ragtime, wrote one opera called Treemonisha. And we'll be presenting that opera, directed by Denise Graves, with a wonderful cast. It's a beautiful, beautiful opera. In a way, we're kind of resuscitating it by working with the Library of Congress. He wrote it in 1910. The orchestrations were never completed by him. His lawyer actually ended up throwing them in the trash by mistake. But in any case, it's a beautiful story about a young black girl in Texarkana at the turn of the last century who is abducted first and then rescued by her community and gets back, and because she is educated, a former slave, but she is educated, she becomes the leader of that community. And so it's a beautiful story about empowerment, about community, and we're actually very fortunate that Viviana, who you will hear tonight singing the role of Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro, will be playing the title role in that piece. That will be in repertory with an opera called The Crucible. I'm sure many of you know the great Tony Award-winning play, one of the pillars of American drama, American naturalism by Arthur Miller, The Crucible. It also is an opera, and it's a beautiful neo-romantic opera. It won a Pulitzer Prize in 1961, and if you've never read the play, I strongly recommend it. It's an important play, certainly for our times. Arthur Miller wrote it about the Salem witch trials of 1692, but it was really an allegory about McCarthyism in the 1950s in the United States, which was basically also known as the Red Scare, where people were accused of being communists, and many people lost their jobs, many artists lost various parts of their careers. Arthur Miller himself lost his passport for over a decade. He couldn't travel. And one of the people accused during that of being a communist was the great American composer Leonard Bernstein, who wrote the last piece that we're doing in the season, which is West Side Story. We'll be presenting West Side Story in an opera season, which means that we'll be bringing something very different and special to it. We will be presenting it with a huge orchestra, 50 players. Normally when you hear a Broadway musical, it's much smaller. A large cast, which mixes music theater performers, dancers, as well as some opera singers. And also we will be recreating the original Jerome Robbins choreography, which is quite well known. So that whole panoply of new works from AOI, The Crucible, Treemonisha, and West Side Story gives us an amazing look at American music. So that's our season in a nutshell. But tonight we're going to focus and drill down a little bit on the marriage of Figaro, and I'll be back to answer more questions. I think you're going to give a great intro to it now.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hear a couple of arias from our wonderful young artists, as well as one of our young artist pianists. So thank you for that. Over to you, Diego.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. So, and as you understood, so here we teach Italian, but since la musica parla italiano, so Italian is the language of music. In 2018, we also founded ICS Music School, and so we give piano lessons, violin lessons, and we have a choir for adults and for children. And the director is Maestro Diego Rodriguez, who I want to introduce briefly. Diego is a classically trained violinist and musicologist, holding degrees from Conservatorio Frescobaldi di Ferrara, the University of Bolzano, and Conservatorio Monteverdi di Bolzano. With over 12 years of teaching experience, he is a passionate violin and viola educator, a former member of Colombia's Orchestra Nueva Filarmonia, and he received a Latin Grammy Award in 2019. He has performed with leading orchestras across Europe and Latin America. Diego, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, buonasera a tutti. Well, The Marriage of Figaro, one of the greatest operas ever. I believe it's the greatest comic opera ever. Francesca mentioned the libretto and how bold the decision from Mozart was to pick on this libretto. This is something very relevant because you have to understand what the climate in Europe was during those times. So we're heading towards the Enlightenment era, and choosing this libretto that specifically portrays this conflict and how a very clever servant outsmarts its boss, it's something that is truly fascinating. It was a very controversial topic because of the social and political themes. The opera unfolds on this fantastic day of madness, questa folle giornata, in the palace of the Count of Almaviva near Seville. Now, about the Italian language and the connection to the Italian language, that's where I want to touch base, because the relationship, Mozart's relationship with Italy was very, very strong. Mozart traveled through Italy still in his still a teenager, and he was in Bolzano, Bologna, Milano, Roma, Florence, and so on. But actually his debut as an opera composer happened in the city of Milan, the opera Mitridate Re di Ponto, 1770. Bear in mind that Mozart was born in 1756, so he was 14 years old. Now, this interest of Mozart's into Italian language was not only because of opera. You have to know that Mozart spoke Italian fluently, and he oftentimes wrote letters to his sister Nana and to his father in Italian. When he wanted to highlight certain elements, he oftentimes chose Italian. These letters, you can see there's an archive where you can actually see handwritten letters by Mozart. Fantastic document. But the choosing the libretto was something that he wanted to do, but he had to find the perfect partner for this to be a great success. And that person was Lorenzo da Ponte. Lorenzo da Ponte, he was born in the Republic of Venice. He was born in 1749, and they worked together for this fantastic trilogy, the Italian trilogy. This was the first opera of this trilogy. Wonderful librettist. Many people don't know that after the success in Vienna, he moved briefly to London, and then he ended up here in America, and actually he passed away in New York in 1838. And he kept working as an opera impresario, still working with opera. I believe he was the missing piece for Mozart's for Mozart to begin working in this opera. He actually wrote a letter to his father, Leopold, letting him know that he wanted to do something, but he was looking into many librettos, but what he ultimately decided to go with this one because he knew that Lorenzo da Ponte could get him through. So now we are gonna, I wanna welcome Robert Fraser, that we will sing Non più andrai. This is the finale from the first act. This is a wonderful finale for this first act, where there's a combination, there's a little bit of a mix with a very, very happy allegro tempo at the beginning, then moving on into a military march because Cherubino is going to the army. So without further ado, Robert Fraser.
Non vedrai farfallone amoroso, notte e giorno d'intorno girando, delle belle turbando a riposo, narcisetto aroncino d'amor. Delle belle turbando a riposo, narcisetto aroncino d'amor. Non più avrai questi bei pennacchini, quel cappello leggero e galante, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante, quel vermiglio d'onesto color, quel vermiglio d'onesto color. Non più avrai quei pennacchini, quel cappello, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante. Non vedrai farfallone amoroso, notte e giorno d'intorno girando, delle belle turbando a riposo, narcisetto aroncino d'amor. Delle belle turbando a riposo, narcisetto aroncino d'amor. Tra corrieri puffer bacco, gran mostacchi stretto sacco, schioba in spalla, sciaba al fianco, collo dritto, muso franco, un gran casco, un gran turbante, molto onor, poco condante, poco condante, poco condante. Ed invece nel fandango una marcia per il fango, per montane e per valoni, con le nevi e solioni al concerto di tromboni, di bombarde e di cannoni, che le pari in tutti i tuoni all'orecchio fan festinar. Non più avrai quei pennacchini, non più avrai quel capello, non più avrai quella chioma, non più avrai quell'aria brillante. Non vedrai farfallone amoroso, notte e giorno intorno girando, delle mele trovano riposo, narcisetto aroncino d'amor. Delle belle trovando a riposo, narcisetto aroncino d'amor. Cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, Cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar.
So, about this melody, specifically the march at the end, some of you might remember the movie by Milos Forman, Amadeus, from 1984. There's a very popular, very famous scene where poor Salieri writes a march to present to Mozart. Mozart memorizes the march and started playing it back. And he just says, this doesn't quite work, does it? And then he started improvising over this theme. So it's just this, that's how it might sound familiar. Terrific movie, wonderful movie, but yeah, it's not that accurate from the historical point of view, but yeah. Salieri was a fantastic composer as well. He was just unlucky to be against the genius of Mozart, and that happened to many other composers. There were fantastic Italian composers at the time, but the genius of Mozart was just something unachievable. Okay, up next we have Hai già vinta la causa, vedrò mentre io sospiro. So this is an aria by the Count. We are jumping a little bit ahead. This is on the third act. And this is the Mozart's musical depiction of the Count's arrogance, the jealousy, and his hypocrisy. It's a masterpiece of, this is a dramma giocoso. So the scene begins with a brief and tense recitativo, where the Count believes he has finally outmaneuvered his servants. Of course, he believes that they cannot be smarter than him, and won the legal battle to stop the wedding. In terms of musicality, there's a beautiful harmonic restlessness and that's abrupt dynamic changes. There's a lot of irony within the choice that Mozart made in terms of orchestration. Is the depiction of a man full of authority, a very powerful man that believes that he's untouchable, full of privilege, and he's being completely undone by his own passions. So I would like to welcome Thandolue Tumamba, that he will sing the aria by the Count. Okay.
Ehi, Susanna, dove vai?
Taci, senza avvocato, hai già vinta la causa.
Cosa è nato? Hai già vinta la causa? Cosa sento? In qual laccio io carea? Perfidi, io voglio ritarmare o punirvi. A piacer mio la sentenza sarà. Ma se pagasse la vecchia pretendente, pagarla in qual maniera? E poi Antonio che a un incognito Figaro ricusa di dare una nipote in matrimonio. Coltivando l'orgoglio di questo mentecatto, tutto giova un raggiro. Il colpo è fatto. Vedrò mentr'io sospiro, felice un servo mio. Ben che in van desio ei posseder dovrà, vedrò per man d'amore unito a un vile oggetto, chi merezco un affetto che per me poi non ha, che per me poi non ha. Vedrò mentr'io sospiro, felice un servo mio. Vedrò che il ben ch'io desio ei posseder dovrà, vedrò per man d'amore unito a un vile oggetto che in me destò un affetto che per me poi non ha, che per me poi non ha. Vedrò, 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 vedrò. Oh no, lasciarti in pace, non vo questo contento. Tu non nascesti audace, tu non nascesti audace per dare a me tormento, e forse ancor per ridere di mia infelicità. Già la speranza sola delle vendette mie quest'anima consola, e giubilar mi fa, e giubilar mi fa. Ah, che lasciarti in pace non vo questo contento. Tu non nascesti audace per dare a me tormento, e forse ancor per ridere di mia infelicità. Già la speranza sola delle vedette mie quest'anima consola, e giubilar mi fa, e giubilar mi fa, e giubilar mi fa, e giubilar mi fa, e giubilar mi fa.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. I mentioned the importance of orchestration and how complex it is to represent different atmospheres. With a big orchestra, of course, you have your string section, you have oboes, flutes, then you have French horns, and so on. Then, in this setting, all these very, very complex situation comes, it's summarized by the piano, Mr. Devin Shah. I wanted to mention that because it is unbelievably, you wouldn't believe the scores that the piano players have to read, because they are playing basically all the lines that the orchestra will be playing. So thank you very much. That was fantastic. Before moving on, I wanted to touch base briefly in terms of a synopsis of the opera for the ones that perhaps haven't seen the opera yet. I'll be giving away a bit of spoilers, so yeah, so in the first act, we have Figaro and Susanna. They are preparing for their wedding. The opera starts genius after this. The overture, it's a piece that it's a fantastic piece that is often played as a standalone piece for the orchestra. Very complex for the violins. It's something that it's one of the pieces that you have to play in exams to get into orchestra. It's a very, very complex piece of music, brilliant music. So they are getting ready for their wedding. Figaro learns the Count plans to seduce Susanna, reviving this old feudal right of the first night. So this is where the plot begins. So yeah, now poor Figaro learns this. Well, the very first scene of the opera is just Figaro measuring its room, 5, 10, just measuring the room, which I always thought that just after that frantic overture, it's fantastic just to how calm and just ready for everything that it's gonna be for this crazy day, this folle giornata. The second act, the Countess, she's aware of the husband's infidelity. She joins Susanna, the bride, and they plot to expose him. So there's a lot of comic chaos when the page Cherubino on a pants roll, he's dressed in disguise and he's nearly discovered in the Countess' room. Now, on the third act, we mentioned these causas, this legal dispute. So this is like a side plot that, it's because the Count tries to legally halt the wedding. Susanna and the Countess escalate their counterplot, leading to the Count's furious outburst. And now we get to the fourth act, still in the same day. A night of disguises and mistaken identities takes place in the garden. Figaro, Susanna, the Count and the Countess all get mixed up in the darkness. The Count is finally unmasked, asks his noble wife for forgiveness, and she grants it, restoring order and allowing the happy couples to finally wed. But before this, we have the fantastic aria Devi non tardar. Devi non tardar is preceded by a beautiful recitativo. So please welcome Viviana Woodwin.
Giunse al fine il momento che godrò senza affanno in braccio all'idol mio.
Thank you, that was wonderful. Since I have you here, we were chatting before about the challenges of singing in Italian and the importance, since we are within the week of the Italian language in the world. So I would like to, we were having a chat about this and the importance of Italian language, and what's your thoughts in Italian language in opera? Yeah, so let's, that's your take.
It's my absolute favorite language to sing in, Italian.
Shows.
Yeah. There are just so many sounds that are not only satisfying to hear, but satisfying to say. I think it captures the emotions that the word encapsulates very well, as well as the music. We get taught the concept of legato a lot, and it's so satisfying when you, especially the double consonants, and the discovery that I made recently through our coach Ken is that, you know, you can do like double consonants even when they're not. It's the same letter written back to back, and it's like another dimension of Italian that I'm enjoying.
We were chatting before. We were chatting before about the fact that your native language has some sounds and some phonetics that are kind of similar to Italian, and that perhaps it made it more accessible to you. So please tell us a little bit about that.
So my native language, Siswati, is very phonetic in nature as well. So there's some, which I know Italian is, but to an extent. So the word tosto in Italian, you'd say it the same way in my language. FIGARO, the same way. Noze, not so much. You'd say noze, because, but you know, things like that, cara, okay, now I'm losing this. But what I was saying before is that with the same with our vowels too. What you see is what you hear. We actually have less vowels than Italian, strictly speaking. We only have the 5, but most of the letters they always pronounce the same in the word, which of course is another difference in Italian. But it did make Italian more accessible.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Robert, I wanted to ask you about perhaps singing in other languages and the difference by perhaps with singing in Italian. If you had the opportunity of singing some lieder in German and French as well, and which one you found more challenging?
Well, of course, I think certain voices lend themselves, they have certain attributes that lend themselves to different languages, but Italian is like the universal language for all voices. That's how, sorry, okay. Sorry. I mean, the way that they teach us to, there we go. The way that they teach us to sing properly is using the 5 Italian vowels. So I think you can't get much better than singing in Italian. But of course, like in Russian, there's different consonants. In German, there's different consonants. But it's the easiest language to sing in is Italian. So there you go.
Yeah. Yes, just an encouraging word for our Italian students that I know that sometimes complain, but don't complain. Robert, any favorite area from the Italian repertoire that you think this is a must, just for our public, that you gotta listen to this if they have not yet?
Oh my goodness! No, there's so many. There's so many. I mean. Being a bass baritone myself, I listen to a lot of his repertoire, which is a little higher than mine. Just like anything Verdi for baritone, give that a listen, because it's some of the most beautiful music. And then, of course, as she was saying about next season, you know, with possibly doing Puccini and things like that, there are plenty of operas that you should come listen to that might be Puccini that would be great for tenor and soprano. So you never know.
Thank you very much. And Viviana, your experience with Italian, was it so challenging, or you felt right at home at the beginning when you began singing?
I would
say I felt pretty at home. I am originally from Oklahoma, and so from America, but my mother worked a lot with the Latino community. And so I did not grow up speaking Spanish, but I grew up in the household with her speaking Spanish. And so listening to kind of how she would pronounce the words, even though there are some similarities, but also a lot of differences, just hearing the way that she would pronounce gave me a very good ear. So even with music, a lot of the times when I was growing up, I didn't learn music by looking at sheet music, but just by hearing it a lot of the times. And so even with Italian, our professor Maddalena jokes with me about that, is that my pronunciation sometimes is very good, even though sometimes I may mix up a rolled R or two every now and then. But is that because my ear is so good. And then thankfully when I was in school in Houston, I got to take a trip to Florence actually for about a month just to study the Italian language. So it's definitely helped kind of ease this path, especially with FIGARO and Susanna running around talking to everyone and anyone that comes on stage.
Mrs. Zambello mentioned your role in Scott Joplin's opera. I don't know if you can tell us a little bit more about that, because it's a fascinating topic, and it's an opera that is not well known, of course, and it's a shame because his music was wonderful, very, very full of energy, and just like a mix of so many different elements. So
Yes, so as she mentioned, it's by Scott Joplin, who is considered kind of the father of ragtime and wrote a lot of instrumental and piano music, but this was his one and only opera that, so he passed away before it was fully realized. Excuse me. And I actually discovered it when I was in school. We got an opportunity in one of my classes to pick an unknown opera or not very well-known opera and do a presentation and do some research on it. And so I had always heard of Porgy and Bess, which I also had the opportunity to be in this past year, in this past season, and thought, it's just specifically regarding Black artists in opera, I was very curious to see what other options there were out there. And I've stumbled upon Tremonisha, and actually a production of Houston Grand Opera doing the kind of what's exactly written on paper, which is not a very fully realized story. So we got to do a workshop of it this past spring while doing Porgy and Bess, and I was very grateful kind of to bounce between both worlds, because with Porgy and Bess, it's a lot of jazz and very full orchestrated moments and a lot of heavily orchestrated moments, and then going to Scott Joplin's music, which is just very simple and very beautiful. And we're very thankful for Damien Sneed, who's going to be helping rearrange some of the orchestral arrangements, and then also rewriting some new text and some new lyrics and a new aria for the character Tremonisha, just to kind of help fully flesh out the story. And very grateful as well for Francesca and Denise Graves for helping the story come to life. So please come see the show.
Devina, lastly, you being a piano accompanist, I'm pretty sure you know a lot of the opera repertoire. So I put you on the spot. If you have some sort of preference, I know it's a very, very difficult question in terms of, question number 2, follow up, which one of the Italian composers you find the most difficult to play? I think I know the answer, but go for it.
So we'll in order of those questions, my favorite composers are Puccini and Verdi. It's very hard to beat Italian verismo repertoire. Even going to Mascagni and Cilea. Just the stories and the emotional content of the music, the staging, and the scenery that the events happen in is just so thrilling for me, because I get to put the orchestra into the piano. I love Mozart dearly as well, but I just have a special spot in my heart for Verdi and Puccini especially. And the second part was difficult to play at the piano. So the beauty and kind of the luck of what I get to do at the piano is it's impossible to play what's printed, right? Because there's 50 instruments in the orchestra all playing separate parts. I only have 10 fingers, I can't do them all. So the great part is I get to choose what I play, which means nobody can tell me that I chose the wrong things, because somebody else will have chosen something else. No matter what school of thought you come from for opera playing, there's always somebody who's chosen to do something different. And so it's a very personalized exercise of reducing a score down to what I want to play. And of course there are standard traditions that you play this, you don't play this. But at the end of the day, it's really up to you and to the conductor that you're working with as far as what you want to put in the rehearsal room and on stage, and how you want to do that. So I would say, now to answer the question, I'd say the hardest is Verdi, just because there's a lot of notes and it often goes at a very difficult pace. But it's great music. So.
Thank you. And we discussed this briefly before in terms of phonetics of the Italian language, and what's that phoneme that you find that it's very difficult, and perhaps you have like a tip for people that are learning Italian on how to get there to that perfect pronunciation. I always insist a lot with the doubles, because it's something I think we all do. But yeah, so your thoughts on this?
Probably the syllable yi.
It's really good.
Tips. I don't know. Pray about it. I think Bobby looks like he has a tip.
No. I'm learning right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we have like an L.
Yeah, Ken has us do that.
Like heavy
L
on
into
the
the
L,
glide,
and then
yeah.
the glide into the Y sound of yi.
That's great.
Take it.
Yeah.
You want to say about the E?
Oh, about the E?
No.
But I would say just my tip is watching a lot of Italian movies.
come
That's
on.
helped me. I love
That's
television.
universal
I
tip.
love binging TV, sitting in my PJs on the couch. And so that was something very helpful for me. It's just getting the language again, hearing, and getting the language in your ear. And so a lot of the formula kind of starts to add up. The more that you hear it, it becomes easier to speak and understand. And so that's the thing too, is I've still working on the speed in the text speaking part, but I can hear it a lot better when I hear someone speaking and I know what they mean.
I feel real one.
Oh.
If you don't mind. I'm sure a lot of people will feel this way too, but I couldn't roll my R's for a very long time. Yes, I couldn't roll my R's for a very long time, and I was given the role of Figaro at the age of 22 or 23, I don't remember. This will be my 4th time doing it soon. And I was like, oh, I can't roll my R's. I was using my uvula the whole time, and this is kind of going to be bad. So just time. You might have like what to do in your head, but getting it in your embouchure, getting it in your mouth and your body takes a long time. So just continue to work on it, and you'll be able to speak Italian. Or sing.
So I would say my practical tip is record yourself often and listen to it when you speak. And when you speak with as many obvious native speakers as possible, and ask them to like interrupt you whenever you speak wrong and just kind of talk over you, because then it's instant feedback as to whether you're right or not. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Excellent advice. Thank you.
It works.
Mr. Zambello, I wanted to ask you about Aida. If you can let us know something about the production, and yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Aida is as a director, I'm also the stage director of the production. So Aida, all these huge operas of Verdi in his middle period. In a funny way, they're almost 2 operas, because much of the opera Aida is really what we call a chamber opera. There are frequently long scenes with just one person doing an aria, 2 people, as I explained before, there's a trio. So there's a lot of scenes where it's just 1 or 2 people, and then there are these huge scenes, especially something very famous called the triumphal scene. I'm sure everybody has an idea. Let me just briefly remind people of the plot of Aida. So there are 2 warring nations. Traditionally, it's Egypt and Ethiopia, but in many ways, it's really a civil war between 2 different factions in the same area, is how I think of it. Amneris is the daughter of the king of the currently victorious side of things, the Egyptian side. They have taken a hostage who is been enslaved by them, Aida, who is Amneris's slave. The general of the Egyptian army is Radames. And so what has happened, unfortunately, is that the general of the Egyptian army has fallen in love with the enslaved girl from the other side. Amneris, the king's daughter, has the hots for Radames. Radames is chosen to lead the next battle, and he is victorious. And so when he returns, the king says to Radames, "You may have the hand of my daughter," which is the last thing that he wants. So what he asks for instead is for all of the hostages that he has brought back to be released. Among those hostages is actually Aida's father, Amonasro. We do not, and he is the king. So nobody knows he's the king, and he's not revealed as to who he is. And so what ends up happening is that this love triangle plays out in war, because Amonasro asks his daughter, Aida, to find out from Radames what is the next attack plan. So she has this incredible conflict of her heart versus her duty and her patriotism. This is the same conflict that all the characters have, actually, because Radames is in love with the enemy's daughter, but he has a responsibility as the general, as the leader of the troops. And then Amonasro, of course, loves his daughter, but loves his country more. And Amneris basically focuses on herself and only wants Radames. What ends up happening is Radames betrays, tells Aida, okay, this is what's going to happen. Amonasro hears it, reveals, and so Radames has become a traitor to his own country. He is then tried in what's the famous thing that's called the judgment scene, and then he is sentenced to death, to die, to suffocate in a tomb. Aida has escaped at this point, and she sneaks into the tomb, so that then Radames comes is imprisoned there, and what ends up happening is they die together through suffocation. Amneris, in this beautiful final moment of the opera, the trio, is on top of the tomb, still longing for Radames. So this love triangle is the core of the story, but the backdrop is civil war. It sounds very contemporary, what I just told you. And of course, Verdi at his own time, Italy, I know there's so many students of Italian history here, of course, was in its own incredible upheaval, the period of the Risorgimento, which is when this opera was written. So what's so fascinating is that Verdi captures in this opera the core thing that's great drama, your duty versus your desire. Everyone has that. Should I do this or should I do that? Should I do what I'm supposed to? So that's the core of the story. But he surrounds it with war. He surrounds it with armies. He surrounds it with dance and with priests and with this sort of incredible aspect of religion in the piece. So I always think of it as a chamber story, really, a love story, but around it is certain things, which is the famous triumphal scene, these huge scenes of war and victory coming back, which is, as a director, you're like, okay, I have to do a scene that happens in the Costco parking lot, and then I have to do a very intimate scene. So how do I approach that? You try to create an environment, a visual environment, where you can tell a story. That's what you always do for every opera that you direct. How can I create a visual world that's going to help the audience understand the story, that's going to give us great places to act out our story? And so in this case, I went to a very famous, actually, graffiti artist, not unlike Banksy. This gentleman's name is Retina. And he uses the art of hieroglyphics to create his work. So in a way, it uses something that's ancient and Egyptian, but also his artwork is very contemporary. He designs clothes and scarves for various things. And so hieroglyphics is the main visual language, but the way it is implemented is very modern. So this is why you have to come see it. And so we create many different spaces through walls, scrims, and drops that create these different environments. So again, I want always to have a sense of an eye to history when you do a certain piece, but also perhaps to find a contemporary twist to it. And so I just want to say one thing about The Marriage of Figaro, which the director, Peter Cazares, and his design team, it's set very much in period. The period, of course, as we talked about with Beaumarchais, this is just before the French Revolution, when Beaumarchais was writing. And so it is set in Seville near the latter part of the 18th century. Very beautiful costumes, beautiful settings that really are evocative of that period in Seville. And with Aida, it's great grandeur. A lot of dance also is part of the piece, because Verdi had this sort of dilemma, which was a lot of his operas were produced in Paris. You couldn't have an opera produced in Paris if you didn't have a ballet. So he stuck a lot of ballet into Aida, and it has stuck, and it's actually very much part of the story. So I encourage everyone, just come see both of them. Okay, that'll be a lot easier. Okay, I'm sure you get a discount. Okay, so I hope that gives a little overview of what you'll come see. And the costumes are magnificent, and it is a huge opera in terms of forces. There's a chorus of 70 people. There are, I think, 10 dancers, a lot of supers. There's also, all the principal characters. We also have a youth dance corps that's in the piece. And I put them in that piece because I felt they represent young soldiers, which is what you see, sadly, all over the world, is we see kids being, drawn into conflict knowingly and unknowingly, and often many young kids, carrying, an M16. And so I put, although there are no M16s in this, I did put kids in it who are also dancers in the piece. So it's an amazing spectacle opera, whereas Figaro is so much more intimate, because Mozart was writing always about the heart, and the message of The Marriage of Figaro is so much about forgiveness in the end, because the Countess in this entire story that you were describing is really about the Countess, in the end, forgives her husband for his supposed infidelities. And of course, Figaro also forgives and accepts and loves Susanna. And when she sang that De Vieni non tardare, the last aria, the tricky thing for it is that she's singing about Figaro and how much she loves him, but the Count is hearing it and thinking that she's singing it for him, and Figaro's thinking, oh my God, she's singing it for him. So it's an incredibly duplicitous piece. Anyway, sorry to ramble, but that gives you a little overview about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, Francesca.
If anybody has questions?
I don't, yeah, perhaps we still have time. If anybody wanted to ask something to our artists or to Zambello. Yeah.
I have a question for the artists. Of course, you talked about singing in Italian, which I bet singing in different languages, I bet it's a big deal, like it must be very difficult, but I think your job is also complicated because you're not just singing, you're acting singing, and so I wanted to ask you about that part more. So you're also having to convey emotions in a language that is maybe not your own, maybe you don't know all the words.
Sure.
How do you approach that?
Sure. So in my conservatory that I was trained in, I'll use the mic.
I've done a lot of Q&As in my life.
Thank you for me.
Just so everyone in the back heard the question, she was asking about, you're not just singing in Italian in a foreign language, you're also acting. Of course, as a director, I think the acting makes it easier, but tell us about how you...
Sure.
I'm not going to give you a mic.
No. So for me personally, I do a word-for-word translation of the Italian into English, and then I make up my own translation of my own vernacular to give me a sense of what I would feel, and then I can more easily put myself into Figaro's shoes in this case, and it's more natural. So I don't know, maybe you guys have a different way of doing it.
I would say it's been different, thank you. On the opposite end, I really struggled a lot with the acting side. I come from a musical theater background, so in that aspect, it kind of came easy when speaking in English in my native language, but specifically in Italian or French or German or in any other language that I did not feel very comfortable in, I had struggled at times because it felt like I was just reciting what was on the page versus actually telling a story, and so it's something that I still am working through, so hopefully if you come see The Marriage of Figaro, give me some props for it. But it sometimes can be very difficult because you have so many thoughts going in your head of trying to pronounce the word correctly, trying to use the right stresses. So devieni non tardar, not tardar. Like just things, a lot of the nuances, because you have so many thoughts running around in your head. But the beautiful thing is that the more comfortable you get with the language, it becomes so much easier to act and to tell the story. And sometimes, as Francesca said, the acting kind of takes it there for you. And so as long as you have the basic rules down of the language, you can let the words do what they need to do.
You know, just people might like to know that the rehearsal process often is, as he said, you know, an artist must translate everything into their own language before rehearsal starts. They know that as young artists. But as a director, a lot of times I will do an improv in a scene, even a sung scene, and say, okay, we are going to do the scene between the Count and Susanna, where he's basically kind of chasing her around and she's like, you know, whatever. And so, but often it's really helpful to do it in the language of the people that you're working with. So, you know, they both speak English, so we would do it in English. Sometimes you are doing it with multinational in a room where everybody, and sometimes I do it and I say, okay, let's do everybody, you speak in your own language, translate it into what it is for you, and let's do the scene. And you have these incredible experiences often that come out, and that then you can put that back into the music. And you know, particularly Mozart, you know, he gives you so much in the text, but that's often that's a rehearsal technique that we often use to help create a scene and figure out what does the scene mean. And particularly, I mean, we didn't mention, you know, Wagner, who's right up there with me, my favorite composers, but you know, Wagner, you really have to do that before you start staging it. Other questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I'm studying French. I'm Italian and American. And what I find very useful, this has to do with Mr. Mamba's question about pronunciation. If you type your aria into the Italian English translation in Google, then there is, of course, Google Translate, right? Then there is a microphone there. You press the microphone and you can hear the pronunciation as many times as you want. And if it is just a specific sound like ye or ni, G-N-I, okay, you can hear it many, many, many times. You don't find anybody who can do that for you. But Google does it.
So he's sending everybody to Google. But, you know, I have to say that, you know, you want singers to be idiomatic. Particularly, you know, the art of Mozart is very different than Verdi. Okay, they're separated by almost 100 years in composition. Mozart uses recitative, okay, which is basically, well, it is only accompanied by a harpsichord, and it is dialogue. And that is the hardest thing to do well. He only sang one, he only sang O Già vinta la causa before that. When he sang that, that's actually accompanied recitative by the orchestra, which is very different than just recitative, which is accompanied by a harpsichord. It is much more difficult for them to learn that, to make it idiomatic, and to direct it, because it's conversational. Yeah. And recit, you know, that's so important in Italian operas, in Mozart, in Rossini, in Donizetti, and Bellini. And then Verdi was like, okay, I've had it with recit, I'm gonna orchestrate everything. And then Puccini, of course, you know, we get to Verismo, a completely different school of writing. But you want them to be idiomatic, so I don't want them to listen to Google pronounce it. I want them to find a way to stress the words, because when you listen to those Google translate, the stress isn't right often, you know, and you want them to understand exactly. And also, you know, you need in a sentence, you know, in good acting, you pick out a word that's important in a sentence. This is very basic acting technique. But when you're doing a recit, you have to find where's the important word in that sentence. Where does the stress fall? And often the language can help lead you there, but you can also work around the language. You know, we could do a whole lecture on this, but we won't right now.
Just one more point about their performance.
Oh, very important sales point now. Okay. Aida opens October 24th and runs through November. It's on that.
November 2nd.
November 2nd. The Marriage of Figaro opens with one cast on
November 14th.
As you heard them talk about, the Cafritz Young Artists have their own performance, a special performance, which is on Saturday night, November 15th. So what you should do is probably see it twice. Okay. But you should come see all of them on November 15th, which is a really exciting night because it's all of our young artists really strutting their stuff. And the conductor in this case is Robert Spano, who is our new music director, former music director of the Atlanta Symphony, and just a magnificent, magnificent conductor, and a Mozart specialist. And all those things when we're talking about shaping the words, Mozart had great words. Anyway, because he had De Ponte, he had a genius librettist for these three operas, for the Mozart cycle. So, anyway, November 15th. Thank you. 15 novembre.
Thank you, everyone. And guess what's my tip for improving your pronunciation and for learning Italian? Come to the Italian Cultural Society. So we have a few teachers here, Cristiana, Rosario, Irene, who is also helping, and who else? Silvana. Thank you for being here. We also have a few board members, Sergei Forden, Anne-Marie Camisa. Thank you for coming, and thank you to my new colleague, Martina Chiara, who is managing this event and the next many of the future events. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for our volunteers, Irene, Sofia, who are working, of course, and thank you truly for you're welcome here at any time to promote the Washington National Opera program. And thank you for coming, Francesca. Thank you, Shiana. Thank you, Francesca. And thank you, Diego, for Thank you to the young artists. Yes, we want to come November 15th and November 22nd. That is the night with the backstage tour and champagne toast for the marriage of Figaro, and October 30th for Aida. And remember, your discount code is here. You have all the information, and information about our language courses are in the front, the reception, and on our website. And now you're welcome for an aperitivo italiano with some prosecco and some food here. Enjoy. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Molte grazie. Comunque guardi che c'è la differenza
Delizioso.